For this fabric, we're using the single rib edge cast on method. If you have a 40 cm circular needle, you can use a 40 cm small circular needle for casting on. If not, you can use our straight needles for casting on. Here I'm demonstrating a swatch, and I'm using straight needles for casting on. To make the demonstration clearer and more convenient, I'm using different yarn for this demonstration. First, we'll make a slip knot at one end of the yarn tail. Then thread the needle through the slip knot and pull it tight. Next, we'll begin casting on. Knit the first stitch, pass through the slip knot, and knit one knit stitch. Then place it on the left needle. That's how the first stitch is cast on, and we don't need to pull it too tight at this point. Next, we'll cast on the second stitch. Since this is single rib, we'll cast on one purl stitch followed by one knit stitch. We just knitted a knit stitch, now we'll purl. Place the yarn in front of the needle, pass through the gap between the two loops from back to front, purl one stitch, then gently tighten the loop. Then place it on the needle, and that's how one purl stitch is cast on. Next, cast on a knit stitch by placing the yarn behind the needle, passing through the gap between the two loops from front to back to knit one stitch. Place it on the needle. For purl stitches, place the yarn in front, pass through from back to front. Purl one stitch. Place it on the needle. We'll continue casting on in this knit purl pattern. Since our single rib requires an even number of stitches, make sure to cast on an even number of stitches. Now that I've cast on the required number of stitches, we can cast all stitches onto one needle first, then divide them. Now I'll evenly distribute them across 3 needles. If you're using 5 needles, you'd divide them across 4 needles. Now that I've divided the stitches, we'll leave one needle empty. Then we'll now join them into a circle. When joining in the round, make sure the loops aren't twisted, all loops should face upward with the cast-on edge at the bottom. Okay, now that we've formed a circle, we'll begin working in the round using the long tail we left earlier. At the beginning, don't switch needles, just continue working with this same needle. You can see here this little V shape. This is what we call a knit stitch, while the indented one is a purl stitch. So here, where there's a bump out and a dent in, we purl the dented ones and knit the bumped out ones. The first stitch here is our slip knot, which we'll simply knit as a regular knit stitch. Knit the first stitch, and we won't place a stitch marker here yet because the first round tends to be loose, so we need to pull tight and wrap it very snugly. Then for the second stitch, purl it, and again pull very tight so the gap becomes smaller. Starting from the third stitch, we can knit normally. To prevent visible joins when switching needles, knit 2-3 stitches forward before switching to a new needle. I usually prefer to switch needles at a knit stitch position because it's more convenient for knitting. Do this for each needle, knit 2-3 stitches forward, then switch. Now that I've finished with the new needle, I'll continue knitting 2-3 more stitches with this same needle. You can also adjust the number of stitches on your needles. If you're using circular needles, you don't need to worry about this, just keep knitting. Then switch to a new needle again. We'll use this method to complete the entire round. Now we've reached the last 2 stitches, one knit stitch followed by one purl stitch. Since we pulled these stitches tight, it might be hard to see, so remember to pick them up clearly before knitting. Then comes a purl stitch. This completes our round. Moving forward, whenever we encounter a knit stitch section, we'll simply knit it. When knitting single rib, we don't need stitch markers because the transition point is quite visible. You can see at this stitch where the knit section begins, that's our transition point. Complete your single rib first. Now we'll begin knitting the yoke section. When knitting the yoke, we need to work in color work, and remember to switch to needles 2 sizes larger for the color work. Depending on the pattern grid, select different colors to knit accordingly. For the entire color work round, we'll knit all stitches as knit stitches. While knitting, insert stitch markers onto the needle to make it easier to divide sections later, when increasing. First, go to the first stitch. The stitch with the yarn tail is our starting point. Insert a stitch marker here as our beginning marker. You can use a different color or size to distinguish it. Now we'll knit all stitches as knit stitches. Our color scheme uses green, so hold the green yarn with your middle finger against the back of the fabric, and knit 1 green stitch, first knit stitch, then 1 white stitch for the purl stitch position. Simply follow the color pattern in each square. To make knitting more convenient, hold both yarns in your hand, one with middle finger, one with index finger. Purl stitches with white yarn, knit stitches with green yarn, alternating this way will make your work slightly faster. After completing 6 stitches, insert a stitch marker. Place a marker every 6 stitches, then continue knitting in the same pattern, 1 green, 1 white. Knit 6 more stitches. Insert another stitch marker. Continue this identical method to complete the entire round. Now the first round is complete. Now we'll start knitting the second round. The method for the second round is the same as the first round, just slip the stitch marker. Then knit green stitches with green yarn. Knit white stitches with white yarn, and gently pull the green yarn tail to prevent dropped stitches. Continue with the same pattern as before, knitting all stitches as knit stitches. When you reach a stitch marker, simply slip it and continue knitting the next stitches. Follow this method to complete the entire round. I've now completed the second round. For the third round, we'll knit red on the green sections while keeping white sections white. This means the next row will be white and red color work. Don't cut the green yarn since we'll need it again in the next row. Join the red yarn and continue knitting using our previous method. Just leave the green yarn below without cutting it. Now use red and white yarn to continue knitting. I won't demonstrate this row anymore, you can complete it on your own. I've now finished the third round, and we'll switch back to green yarn for the next round. Just pull up the green yarn directly. Gently pull the first red stitch to prevent dropped stitches. Change red sections to green while keeping white sections white. I won't demonstrate this round either, complete it by yourself. I've now completed the first 4 rounds without increasing or decreasing. For the next round, we'll do increases using only green yarn. We'll make increases on the white sections. Each section between stitch markers forms one pattern repeat, and we need to increase 3 stitches per pattern repeat, specifically at each white loop inside. Now I'll demonstrate how to do the increases. Knit the first green stitch normally, then move to the second white stitch. Insert your right needle through the white loop, pick it up, and place it back onto the left needle with a wrap. This turns one loop into 2 loops. Keep your right needle in place and knit 1 stitch. Then knit another stitch into the same loop. This completes our increase. For green sections, knit normally. First pick up the white loop and wrap it on the needle. Knit 1 stitch. Then knit another single crochet increase into the second loop. This completes our second increase. Continue knitting the green stitch normally, then pick up the next white loop. Wrap it around. Knit 1 stitch, then the second stitch. Still knit in single crochet. This completes our pattern repeat. Next, follow the same method to finish all the remaining patterns. Throughout the entire yoke crocheting process, all increases should be done using this technique. Now that we've completed this round of increases, we'll begin crocheting the colorwork section below. For the next round, we'll keep knitting green where the green sections are. We'll knit white where the white sections are, including the newly increased stitch. Use the same needle and yarn method. First knit 1 green stitch, then these 2 stitches in white. Then continue knitting the next stitch in green, and just follow this method to complete the round. I won't demonstrate the lower yoke section anymore, just complete the yoke part using the same method. Just pay attention to the color in each small square, and use that color yarn accordingly. All increases should follow the same method as the previous row. All subsequent increases will be done on the white middle rows. Meaning when we increase, both the row above and below are worked in white. You can choose any spot you prefer for the increases. Just remember to distribute all increases evenly within each section to reach the required stitch count. Now complete the yoke part yourself using the demonstrated method. Now we'll divide the stitches for the yoke. First remove the main stitch marker. Although this pattern appears to be even numbered, when formed, there will be a high point and a low point, creating an odd numbered pattern that looks better. So when dividing the stitches, we need to find a center stitch on the front body, meaning the patterns on both sides should start and end identically. Taking these 2 motifs as examples, if I end with this stitch on one edge, I must end with the same stitch on the other edge to ensure both sides extend symmetrically. Similarly, if I end with the highest point here, I'll end with the highest point there too. Since each size has different stitch counts, the center stitch varies accordingly. When leaving stitches, if ending with this stitch here, no need to move the loop, just start dividing from this point. But if ending with the longest line here, we can shift the yarn back 1 stitch to keep the center stitch aligned. For sleeves, since we can't maintain center stitches, just follow the chart specified stitch counts. After dividing, there will be 1 center stitch on the front body, and similarly for the other sleeve. First mark these sections with stitch markers, and the dividing is complete. Next we'll start knitting the back body, beginning with creating the back neck drop. Use the main color yarn directly. If you're using circular needles, no need to switch needles, just knit all stitches in stockinette stitch with the main color. When knitting stockinette, remember to use needles one size smaller than for the colorwork section. Generally, when knitting colorwork, your tension tends to be slightly tighter. Knit to the stitch marker position, then remove the marker. Next, don't rush to knit yet, first transfer the sleeve stitches onto waste yarn. Take a piece of waste yarn, and a sewing needle to thread the sleeve stitches. Now that we've divided the stitches, we'll begin knitting the back body section. Knit the neck drop for 3 cm, 10 rows, working knit stitches on right side rows, and purl stitches on wrong side rows. I've now completed the neck drop, having worked 10 rows even without increasing or decreasing. Next, I'll demonstrate using the smallest size as an example. If you're working other sizes, refer to the pattern chart for specific increase stitch counts. Next, we need to join the front and back body sections together for circular knitting. First, knit across this row, working all stitches as knit stitches. Now we'll begin underarm increases. Simply use the finger wrap method to increase stitches. Using the smallest size as example, I'll increase 10 stitches, turn the fabric over and use the finger wrap method to add 10 stitches. I'll actually add 2 fewer stitches since finger wrapped increases tend to be looser. By adding 2 fewer now, I'll pick up those extra 2 stitches later during knitting. Next, skip over the sleeve section, and continue knitting across the entire front body section. Similarly on this side, we'll work 10 stitches but only wrap 8 stitches. With increases complete, we'll now begin circular knitting. For the first round, don't place stitch markers yet to prevent gaps from becoming too large. Gently pull tight on the first stitch, since this seam position tends to be loose. Knit 2 tighter stitches at the beginning, then continue normally until reaching the underarm increase area. At the increase point, simply work through the loop as usual. Be mindful not to stretch the yarn, keep a slight tension to prevent excessive gaps. If gaps appear too large, pick up from front to back then work the next stitch, effectively adding an extra stitch. Continue knitting all stitches as knit stitches. When gaps widen again, wrap yarn around needle before working back to front. This completes the 10 underarm stitches. Continue normally across the entire front body section until reaching the other underarm. Use the same method to complete the 10 underarm stitches on this side. At the underarm section, the knitting method remains the same. Knit 3/4 stitches first, then pick up an extra stitch when the loop becomes too long. Since we missed 2 stitches earlier, we'll add 2 stitches here. If you only missed 1 stitch, just add 1 stitch. This completes 1 full round. Now insert a stitch marker. No further demonstration needed as you'll continue knitting plain stitches until reaching desired length. After completing the even stockinette section, we'll begin working the bottom edge ribbing. Since this is just a swatch demonstration, I won't continue knitting further. Now I'll demonstrate single ribbing. Remove the stitch marker, use smaller needles like for neckline, and work single rib, knit 1, Purl 1. No increases or decreases needed, just maintain single rib pattern using smaller needles. You can refer to the pattern chart or adjust based on your preference for the exact length. After completing the ribbed edge, we'll begin binding off. Remove the stitch marker and use the knit as you go binding off method. When you see a knit stitch, work a purl. When you see a purl stitch, work a knit. Always work the opposite stitch. For the first knit stitch, place yarn in front and work one purl stitch, making sure to pull tight since this is the connection point. Then remove hook from loop, bring yarn to back, and pull through the loop. Since the next stitch is purl, we'll work a knit stitch. Keep yarn at back, knit one stitch, slightly tighter, then lift first loop over, completing one bound off stitch. Next is a knit stitch, so we work purl, remove hook from loop, bring yarn forward, then insert hook to work one purl stitch normally. Then lift and cover. Next is purl stitch, so work knit stitch with yarn at back. Then cover again. Continue this alternating knit purl method, lifting each loop over the previous one. Now that we've completed the last stitch, elongate the loop and cut the yarn, leaving about 10 cm tail. Use a yarn needle to sew up this gap. Notice this V shape only shows half, the other half is missing. The back loop half stitch is here at the back, pick it up, and flip it over to reveal the other half of the V shape. Pass through this strand from back to front, then pull through. Tighten. Next, pick up the back strand and insert through a small V gap, then tighten to close the gap. Simply thread the yarn through the single ribbing all the way down. Since I have fewer stitches here, I won't demonstrate further. Trim the yarn tail. The body section is now complete. For the neckline binding off, use the same method we just demonstrated to finish the sewing area. Now let's pick up the sleeves. You can start with either side. Transfer all the reserved loops from the waste yarn back onto the straight needle. I'll demonstrate using the smaller size stitch count. Since we added 10 stitches under the arm, we need to pick up 10 stitches here at the underarm. The total sleeve requires 19 stitches to be picked up, so we only need to pick up 9 stitches in this section. Let me explain how to do the picking up. For the bottom part, we pick up stitches through the inverted V-shaped loops. Since this stitch might be slightly loose, we'll insert the needle beside it through the inverted V-shaped loop area. All entries happen here. When picking up the different section, go through the gap between two braids. You'll see an uneven row of braids along this edge. Treat this as the edge stitch, then pick up through the gap between this edge stitch and the second braid. Now I'll pick up this sleeve starting from the underarm area, inserting into this inverted small V, then connecting the yarn. Here I pick up one stitch, then one stitch through each inverted V loop. Pick up one stitch in every inverted V loop. Okay, we've now picked up 10 stitches. Next, when we start picking up stitches, we work through the rows. This stitch might be a bit loose, so we'll pick up right between these two strands. We need to add one extra stitch here. Then move forward one space, meaning after the stitch we just picked up, go to the next row and pick up another stitch. We need to pick up 9 stitches here, and we've done 3 so far. If we pick up every single stitch, it definitely won't be enough. So in this section, we need to skip rows while picking up. I'll skip this row, not picking up this stitch, and pick up in the row below instead. Just pick up 9 stitches total. How many rows you skip between stitches depends on your specific situation. We still need 3 more stitches, so let's skip another row and pick up ahead. For the last stitch, skip another row and pick up in the row below here. This way, the chain spaces won't be as noticeable. Okay, all 19 stitches have been picked up. After finishing, remember to check if you have exactly 19 stitches. Continue knitting forward until you finish the stitches left on the needle. At the seam here, this gap is quite large. We'll bind off with the first stitch. Pick up a strand and place it on the left needle, then knit it together with the first stitch, 2 stitches together as one knit stitch. This way, we close the hole and pull the yarn tight. The hole is now closed. Let's pick this stitch back up and insert a stitch marker. Then pick it back again, and continue working even for the sleeve section. We'll knit the sleeve section first. Once we've reached the required number of rows, we'll proceed with binding off. Next, I'll demonstrate how to bind off the sleeve. First, remove the stitch marker. For our size, we added 10 stitches under the arm. Then we divide these evenly between the front and back bodies, which means each side gets 5 stitches. When we finish binding off, we work on the last 3 stitches, while for the other side, we work on the first 3 stitches. So we skip the last 3 stitches and knit the front part first. For example, here I only need to knit 2 stitches. If you've added more stitches, just knit those extra ones as well. Now we begin binding off here. We'll bind off using a left leaning 2 together decrease. Pass both stitches through the loop together, then knit 1 stitch. This way we've bound off 1 stitch. Then knit 1 stitch in the middle interval, and insert the stitch marker. Next, we work the bind off on the other side. Knit 1 stitch first. For this side's bind off, we use a right leaning 2 together decrease. Slip the first stitch knitwise onto the right needle, then knit the second stitch. Then pick up the first stitch and pull it over. This way we've bound off 1 stitch, and there are 2 stitches left under the arm. These 2 stitches are for binding off under the arm. When binding off under the arm, use a left leaning 2 together decrease on this side to make the line go right. On the left side, use a right leaning 2 together decrease to make the line go left. Always use this method when binding off. Now that we've moved the stitch marker, it means each time we bind off, it's on both sides of this marker, 3 stitches here, the first 2 stitches form a left leaning 2 together decrease, and on this side, knit 1 stitch first, then do a right leaning 2 together decrease with the next 2s. We know this stitch marker marks the end of the round, so starting from here, the next time we bind off will begin from this side. After binding off, when only 3 stitches remain at the end of the round, do the bind off on this side. Next time we continue binding off, just remember to work even for the specified number of rows between decreases. After finishing the bind offs and working even, just like the bottom edge, we need to work single ribbing and then bind off. I won't demonstrate the rest, and I won't demonstrate the other sleeve either, as it's done in the same way as before. Here, we can start casting on directly from the waste yarn, go around once, and finally pick up the stitches for the underarm increases. The method for picking up stitches is the same as the other side, except when moving the stitch marker, we knit 5 extra stitches forward before moving it. Here, the stitch marker needs to be moved back 5 stitches first, then place the main stitch marker 5 stitches from each side, and then continue working in the round and decreasing. The method is the same as before, we just follow the pattern. If after picking up the stitches you still find the hole at the join is too big, we can sew the seam line at the underarm part of the sleeve. We pick up this thread and pass it through the hole. Then sew it back, pull it to the ridge of the increase stitch, and thread it through. When turned to the right side, the hole will almost disappear.